Thank you so much, Alan. This is sort of unfair to go after John. But thank you for the comic relief. Mine is more of a serious subject, but I will do my best. I went to Takamatsu, as Alan said, in 1994 to 95, and that was on the island of Shikoku in southern Japan, which was considered rural, but not as rural as some of the places that some of you have been. So I have a picture up here with two people that look like me. One of them is me. The other one is my identical twin sister. And so I went to Japan with her because of a long story I'll get into. So together we enjoyed the year in Japan and continued to sort of have connections with VIA over the years. So I did go to Takamatsu, and this is my picture of the walk to school, to the medical school, the rice paddies, which are going to be a theme here in my talk. So since I used to call it VIA, somehow along the years it changed to VIA, but to me VIA is full of acronyms, as we heard from LAB and Dwight. So I wanted to talk to you about my VI experience with another acronym, which is something you're all familiar with, which is RICE. So RICE is my story today. And I'm going to start with R. R is my roots. I'm half Japanese. My mother was born and raised in Japan. And being half Japanese means that I was sort of half acquainted with the culture. I knew the superficial stuff. I had relatives in Japan. My grandmother came every summer and we spoke Japanese, broken Japanese over the years. But everything sort of remained pretty much a mystery over there in Japan. I was familiar with things, but sort of didn't fully incorporate or own the Japanese culture as an American here. So I really wanted to kind of immerse myself in my mother's culture and appreciate a deeper level of understanding. The second part of my story is the I, the illness experience. I was born with cystic fibrosis. It's a genetic disease that's exceedingly rare in Japanese people and Asian people. It's more common in Caucasians, but both parents have to carry the gene for me to have it. So here's a bowl of my rice, which is pancreatic enzymes that I take every day to digest my food. And so going to Takamatsu, going to abroad for a year was a bit of a risk, since this is sort of a more serious illness. I would have loved to go to Bangladesh, but I don't think I would have ever come home. So I'm thankful that Japan was a modern country that had decent medical care and sanitation for my medical needs. This is a picture of myself after smuggling large amounts of medicine into the country for a year, and I'm very grateful that I could speak some Japanese and I could feign some charm and innocence, and they let me through customs. So I lived with all of these treatments that I did with my sister on a daily basis. That's why she came with me. She found her own English teaching jobs while she was there. And thankfully, we also met Dr. Fujita, who was ironically one of my English students. He was also a pulmonologist who had some experience treating cystic fibrosis in Boston when he was there. So he took care of me. He introduced me to some new innovative treatments that America caught on to about 10 years later. And was just an overall really great person. I was in safe hands with him. Later on, in 2009, I went and met Dr. Fujita again. This time, he invited us to the institution where he had a professorship, which was in Okinawa. So I couldn't deny that wonderful opportunity. So in Japan, I would go every day to Kagawa Medical School, and I had about 25 classes, and like many of you probably, taught English and corrected English papers and supervised sort of attempts to give English language presentations. It was a wonderful opportunity to be exposed to the sort of advanced medical care of Japan. The research, the technology was really on the rise, and almost equal in some ways to what we had in America. One of my favorite classes was a group of housewives, all married to doctors. So I would teach the husbands at the school and then come back to their garden or their home and have tea and oyatsu and enjoy nice conversation. It was when I was in Japan that I learned about the situation of cystic fibrosis patients there. There were only a small handful, and unfortunately the median life expectancy was around 10 years of age because there was no CF treatment for this disease even in Japan. And I also learned about the organ donation situation where many people with cystic fibrosis, as their lungs worsen, the only opportunity for survival is a lung transplant. And we had heard stories of Japanese patients who had been listed on the waiting list for 4 years and no lungs were available and these patients died. So it was a very sad story. And again, like somebody mentioned in the video here, it was just chance that I happened to be born in America and these families and these patients happened to live in Japan and their opportunities were so limited even in this advanced country. So to make a long story short, I returned home. I got married to my wonderful husband who survived a few weeks of winter in Takamatsu when he visited. Ironically, Cliff Chang's partner married us. Lots of synchronicities in this story. I then went to social work school and worked a little bit, but then like many people with CF, my disease did progress and I had to go on disability and I was in and out of the hospital quite a bit, and ultimately went into lung failure. But thankfully, I waited for a transplant for 2 weeks and received the gift of life in only 2 weeks. And this young man on the right-hand side is my organ donor, a young Mexican-American man. So now I guess I can brag that I'm triracial. So life sort of throws opportunities, and I was trying to think of some clever way to say, rice turns to sake, but that's kind of nice. Or, anyway, I couldn't think of anything. But my life has been wonderful now. I am healthy for the first time, and I let go of my bocce sticks and no longer play taiko and picked up the bagpipes instead to celebrate my lungs. So this is my little tiny pitch here. If any of you have ever thought about organ donation and are interested in signing up to be a donor, please check out the website donatelife.net because you can make a huge difference after your life is over. So the C of my RICE acronym here is champion in a cause. Now, when you are reached the end of your life, when I reached the end of my life and then suddenly woke up and could breathe better than I'd ever breathed in my life, such a transformative experience sort of compelled me to do something with it. I wrote a memoir, and then I ended up having that memoir translated and published in Japan in 2009. So I started to give speeches and share this story and share the patient's perspective with the psychosocial angle because that was my profession. And just started to share my story. That's really all I have been doing. And then somewhere along the lines, my husband met a documentary filmmaker, and he was interested in the story and the situation in Japan, so he decided to come along, and we worked on making a documentary film, not just about sort of my journey, but about the situation in Japan, featuring many other stories of individuals. So when we became very active in the organ donation community here in America, what we did notice was a lack of Asian American participation, and it sort of ties into what we witnessed in Japan as well, and probably other Asian cultures, is sort of this discomfort with the idea of organ donation. Just to give you an idea, here in America, our waiting list is about 117,000 people who need organs, and about 60% of them are people of color. And about maybe 40% of them are of people who donate organs are people of color. And the same discrepancy exists in the Asian community as well. So why is that? And here in Japan, there's organ donation. It sort of mimics this issue in America. Like, what is it about this topic that is so difficult in Japan? Of all the industrialized countries with excellent health care, Japan has the lowest rates of organ donation. And so one of our friends from TRIO, which is Transplant Recipient International Organization in Japan, he said trying to promote organ donation in Japan is like sprinkling a few drops of water on a desert and expecting a tree to grow. So that's very depressing, but it kind of demonstrates how sensitive this topic is and how difficult it is to influence change. So I think that I might be sharing some information that some of you know from other Asian cultures, that in Asia the topic of death is taboo and it brings bad luck. Many Asian cultures, including Japan, are really focused on a lot of superstitions that have existed for many years. Oops, there's the number. Okay, so I'm going to move forward and just say that other issues with organ donation are like that the soul and the body are not necessarily separated after death, and so people have to kind of come to terms with what it means to give up parts of your body, parts of your soul, and give them to strangers. I mean, so I really appreciate how much of our culture is sort of based in the Judeo-Christian value of the separation, the duality of soul and body after death. It's not the case in others. And then also the main issue in Japan is difficulty understanding brain death, that it's possible to die with your brain not working as opposed to your heart stopping. So we created this documentary film. My husband was the producer, and then continue to release this film and use it as an educational tool, just like our book. I don't know if we have time for the trailer, do we? Okay, we do. Thank you. So I'm going to just share with you the trailer. Let's see if this is going to work. It's feisty. How do we push play? I don't know where it went. Okay. Yeah, put this cursor here. There. Let's see if that works.
My name is Annabelle Mariko Stenzel.
My name is Isabel Yuriko Stenzel Byrnes. We are twin sisters. We were both born with cystic fibrosis.
Every hospitalization they experienced, I felt like I did something wrong, and it was very, very difficult.
Cystic fibrosis causes progressive lung disease. As your lungs become more damaged, the only hope for survival is lung transplantation.
Right now, we have this terrible problem of a limitation in the numbers of available organs for those who desperately need them.
She's 29 and she's at the end of her life with cystic fibrosis.
No matter how hard I try, it's still gonna win.
When you receive a gift as amazing as a transplant, there is some sense of obligation to give back.
Advocacy is the engine of change, and the power of advocacy is it can start with one person. In this case, two people.
I was her partner in life, going through end-stage disease together. The way that Japanese culture deals with transplant and organ donation is very different from us. We have friends who are standing on street corners with a box saying, please give money for a transplant. Before, I was very apprehensive of being so public, but now I see it as an opportunity to touch people's lives.
Okay, I'm ending that quite a little bit early, but so that's just a sample of our film that we have been using throughout Japan and America for promotion of organ donation. So finally, the E of my RICE acronym here is about encouraging the conversation to bring this topic of death and organ donation, which is really about life, to the Japanese people, and partially going to Japan and doing this advocacy work, but also through Japanese coming here with exchanging healthcare program and speaking with other donor families, people who have lost a loved one who donated organs, and really sitting down intimately to talk about individual fears. I mean, everybody, most people are afraid to talk about death or to think of their own death, but this is an opportunity for the Japanese people, especially medical students, to be the leaders in their country to make some change happen with a newer understanding of organ donation. So I've had many synchronistic experiences in my last 20 years. Some of the physicians who organized Exploring Healthcare then invited us back to Takamatsu, where we met our Japanese housewives friends again. And many other stories like that. But ultimately, what I'm hoping that our film can do is encourage the Japanese people to share their own personal narratives. During our filming, we could not find a single patient who was comfortable being interviewed because illness is such a stigma and a source of shame. And little by little, we have personal relationships with people who are feeling slightly more comfortable telling their story, and I applaud their courage. So lastly, impacting change happens one grain at a time. All together, it sure looks good and tastes good. Sometimes change is messy and smelly. This is natto, if any of you have ever tried that. It's very good. But overall, that's what what I acknowledge is my role here in this conversation is just one person two people telling their stories and hoping for more to come forward. So thank you very much for your interest.